Madam Chair, first of all, congratulations on your appointment as the Chair. It is good to see a Pacific representative in this important position. This statement on extractive industry is supported by the Pacific Caucus. Recommendation. We recommend a special rapporteur on rights of indigenous peoples investigate ways and means to develop a judicial mechanism to enable indigenous people to hold businesses and multinationals in extractive industries accountable for human rights violations and criminal acts in international lands and against international peoples in accordance with international criminal law and outlined in the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Further, we recommend that a special rapporteur on the rights of indigenous people coordinate with other relevant special rapporteurs to undertake and investigate these issues in the Pacific area. Extractive industries, multinational companies continue to violate our human rights in plundering of our resources. We're deeply aware that the rape of our women, our girls, murder of our people, and environmental destruction and devastation of our land are in fact criminal acts being committed against us in our own Pacific waters and lands. Those corporations magnate from developed states for the benefit of development privilege global north and west. However, we have no opportunity for fair judicial redress on impartial litigation. Indigenous landowners victims to extractive industries experience tailings into their river system and poisoning of the earth that is needed to sustain indigenous life and culture, resulting in environmental violence, from environmental damage to our food chains to the importing and planting of unsustainable crops, threatening our food security. The food peoples of the Pacific experience cultural genocide, and the ends of extractive industries then face little to no legal recourse on the ground human rights or criminal law standards are not being met. In fact, it is as if the business are the ones dictating the laws of the land. The weakness of the states' governments in supporting foreign companies from developed states entering our scarce traditional territorial and life-sustaining lands and resources result in crushing of our Pacific indigenous peoples, health, lives and well-being to a degree that is non-curable and inhumane. Corruption and lack of political willpower permit businesses to get away with crimes ranging from murder to forced relocation and eviction, rape, organized assault, torture and other bodily harms to our families in our homes and through the destruction of and for our resources alongside restriction of media access and labeling of our indigenous Pacific human rights defenders and allies as criminals and subversive and often ending in their deaths. United Nations General Assembly Resolution 1803 Acts on permanent suffering and natural resources as stated, violation of the rights of peoples and nations to sovereign over the natural world and resource is contrary to the spirit and principle of the Charter of the United Nations and enters the development of international cooperation and maintenance of peace. However, we do see those words being upheld in our indigenous people's homeland by the very states who have agreed to this and other treaties, including through the United Nations brief. Violence against our women and men by extractive industries committed by security guards, hired police force, workmen and other extractive industry employees is used as a weapon of intimidation by business forces occupying our territories and dividing the Pacific indigenous people's self-determination. Our ED guidelines are not complied with nor are basic tenets of human and indigenous rights and need for culture and human survival such as land security, fresh water and food, and contamination of traditional practices. Businesses are not held accountable for genocide, cultural genocide, war crimes or crimes against humanity in the context of extractive industry. However, we, the indigenous peoples of the Pacific, are victims of all of these crimes at the hands of extractive industries. United Nations Special Representative of the Secretary General on Sexual Violence in Conflict, Mrs. Zinak Awabanga, has stated that sexual violence in conflict needs to be treated as a war. General comment on number 14 of the international, Finally, we seek the right to begin to hear from the atrocities committed against us by extractive industries and the state that allied with them. However, how can we become healed and healthy again when the atrocities are never ended? For this, we reference Article 24 and 43 of the United Nations Drift, as well as the wisdom of our own scarce ways, people and land. Thank you, Madam.